I've never really been into strategy games. Sitting on a global map, pushing numbers around, managing spreadsheets, and watching little icons fight from a distance. That shit never clicked for me. But there is one series that looks like strategy on the surface and plays like something completely different. Here, you're not just commanding an empire from above, you are part of it. You create your own character, walk the streets of cities, make deals, start a family, and then charge straight into massive battles, swinging your sword in the middle of the chaos, where one good or terrible decision can change everything. Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord is the game that blends grand strategy with real personal involvement in a living, breathing world full of politics, betrayal, and war. You get to build an empire, but nothing comes easy. Every castle, every title, every moment of glory is paid for with time, repetition, and a whole lot of grinding that can wear you down harder than any enemy army. In this video, we're diving into how this medieval sandbox lets you live out those legendary power fantasies, and why you have to work so damn hard for them. Mount and Blade has always felt like a role-playing game to me above all else. Sure, the ultimate power fantasy is right there. Conquering territories, carving out your own kingdom, and becoming untouchable. But the game never forces you down that path. That's the beauty of it. You can chase absolute dominance across the map if you want, or you don't have to. You can live as a simple mercenary, fighting battles for whoever pays the most, with zero interest in thrones or politics. You can become a merchant, building trading routes and businesses across cities. You can focus on your clan, your companions, or just wandering the world looking for trouble. The game doesn't judge, it just gives you the space. Mount and Blade is never about simply going from A to B. It's a sandbox. And because of that, the personal stories you create are not the scripted, handcrafted narratives you get in most RPGs. Your stories emerge naturally from the systems themselves. They come from the relationships inside your clan, the rivalries and alliances you build with lords and factions, the growth of your personal army, random events on the world map, and the endless conflict between kingdoms. Every playthrough feels unique because it's built on your choices inside a living world, not on some pre-written story. But if there is one thing that truly sets Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord apart, it's the battles. We're talking massive army versus army clashes that scale from small skirmishes with 20 bandits all the way up to full-scale sieges and field battles involving thousands of troops. And the real magic happens when you're right in the middle of it. Arrows whistle past your head by the hundreds. Men die every second around you. Cavalry charges crash into enemy formations and shatter them. The chaos is constant, loud, and absolutely exhilarating. You're constantly inside of a spectacle, always with a feeling as if you're part of something grand and brutal. The game gives you real command freedom here. You act as a general, positioning formations, ordering chargers, directing your troops across the battlefield. Or, if you're not in the mood for micromanagement, you can delegate everything to the AI with one button and dive straight into the fray, sword in hand, carving through enemies yourself. And with the War Sales expansion, this whole experience gets another dimension. Naval battles bring new tactics, commanding a fleet of ships, maneuvering with the wind, assigning troops to different vessels, boarding actions, and all the familiar Mount and Blade chaos, but on water. It adds fresh strategic layers and some genuinely exciting moments at sea. Once you've tasted those massive battles, the game pulls you into something quieter but just as deep. The slow, calculated work of actually building and ruling an empire. In Bannerlord, having a strong army is only the beginning. If you want real power and lasting success, you have to become an active player in the world's politics, economy, and endless faction intrigues. For example, during my playthrough, my in-game brother got betrothed to a lady from one of the ruling clans in the Northern Empire. That single marriage dramatically improved my standing with the clan and the king himself. It opened the door for me to swear allegiance, gain favor quickly, And before long, I was granted 2 castles and towns. Suddenly, I went from a wandering warrior to a serious vassal with real influence inside the Northern Empire. But as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And in the case of Mountain Blade 2, owning settlements isn't enough. You have to manage them. You're balancing garrisons, keeping villagers happy, dealing with loyalty issues, and handling cultural differences. Put the wrong governor in a city whose culture doesn't match theirs, and loyalty tanks. Production slows to a crawl, and you suddenly face a risk of rebellion. Sometimes the smartest move is to deliberately avoid taking certain settlements because the headache of managing them just isn't worth the reward. But here's where the fantasy starts to meet reality. Once you've built your foundation, secured some land, and figured out your playstyle, the game slowly shifts. What began as an exciting adventure of discovery turns into routine. You are checking your settlements, recruiting troops, running caravans, clearing bandit camps, and it starts feeling less like an epic journey and more like going to work. The emergent stories born from clans, politics, battles, and random events, they're real, but even those moments eventually fall into repetition. The same types of quests, the same diplomatic dances, the same cycles of war and peace, only gradually increasing in scale. You do the same things you were doing before, only now with bigger armies and higher stakes. There's rarely a sudden twist or fresh layer of intrigue. You're mostly sailing along the systems you've already mastered, doing the same loops with slightly better gear and bigger numbers. That's the grind at the core of Bannerlord. The game gives you an incredible sandbox to build your empire, but the path there is paved with a lot of familiar, repetitive work. The battles are a perfect example. At first, it's incredible. The clash of swords, soldiers roaring, the chaos and high stakes pulling you right in. The first fight hits hard, the 10th still feels epic. Even the 50th can be thrilling. But by the 500th-ish, you start to feel almost nothing. The spectacle is still there, but the novelty is gone. On a macro level, we've already covered a lot. So now let's zoom into the micro. How your character actually grows and evolves. Since I see Bannerlord first and foremost as a role-playing game, character progression is a huge part of what makes it satisfying. And the game does a pretty respectable job here. The system reminds me a lot of Fallout Special. You have core attributes like vigor, control, cunning, social, and so on. Investing in these core stats gives big boosts to more specific skills underneath them. Things like one-handed weapons, two-handed, archery, tactics, charm, leadership, trade, and so on. Then, as you level up those skills, you unlock perks that further customize and specialize your playstyle. If you go heavy into constitution and one-handed weapons, for example, you become a tanky frontline beast. And many perks don't just affect you personally, they radiate out to your entire army. Your troops might get increased damage, better movement speed, higher morale, or improved training speed. There's genuine room for build crafting and experimentation. You can lean into a specific archetype and feel your character and your forces grow stronger and more unique over time. The game gently pushes you to build around what fits your character and personal preferences, not just the meta way. In my own playthrough, my character was strongest with one-handed weapons. Because of that, I naturally built my armies around heavy infantry units. They benefited the most from my perks, getting increased damage, better survivability, and generally improved performance on the battlefield. It felt personal and made my forces feel like an extension of my character. And it works the same way outside of combat. Being heavily invested in social skills and high charisma, I made a point of helping lords and vassals whenever I could, joining their battles, doing favors, building relationships essentially. My connections grew much faster than usual, which let me gain influence and power way more efficiently. And ultimately, this deep personalization is probably the main thing that helps smooth over the game's overall repetitiveness. It keeps you invested even when the loop starts to feel familiar. The biggest thing that holds Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord back from many people is the grind, the repetitive loops and routine that slowly creep in as your empire grows. But for those it appeals to, the ones who love that deep power fantasy of rising from nothing, conquering lands, building a dynasty, and shaping a kingdom, this game is genuinely special. It's one of the few sandboxes that lets you live that dream in a such direct and personal way. If you enjoy open-ended medieval sandbox games and you're ready to invest real time into it, Bannerlord is absolutely worth playing. Just go in knowing it demands patience. For me personally, I really enjoyed my time with it, especially when I stopped chasing a strict in-game goal from the start and instead played moment to moment, doing whatever felt interesting right then. One day focusing on making my settlements prosperous, another day going full conquest mode, just creating my own adventure as I went. When you approach it like that, relaxed, following your mood instead of forcing a grand plan, that's when Bannerlord can truly hook you for hundreds of hours.